Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump, and what we're going to be doing today, in light of the developer update from Papa Jeff last night, is have a bit of fun brainstorming some ideas about new ability concepts and things like that for heroes like Hanzo and Mei, as well as some quality of life adjustments for Symmetra. Now before we get started, I know that these three particular heroes have a bunch of fans that really like them, and a lot of players who really don't enjoy playing against them. So I just want to stress again that word I said at the beginning, fun, as that's why we all play the game in the first place. With that said, I feel like the best course of action is to handle Hanzo and his scatter, rework or replace that might be happening at some point, as that has the potential to be the most impactful. So there's two directions that we can think about. If the plan is to keep scatter arrow, there are some things that Blizzard could do. One, you could make its cooldown longer, which is kinda dull, and it is just a net reduction on Hanzo's potential output, and to be fair, it would still feel pretty garbage to get killed by, especially if you're a tank. You could alternatively max out Scatter's damage at say 300, kind of like the nerf that Fan the Hammer got from a while ago for McCree. That was specifically done to stop him shredding tanks. And if I sense one common thread about the complaints about Scatter Arrow, it's that sense that it's so unpredictable. You don't really feel safe as any hero when you see a Hanzo in front of you. At least if its max damage was set to a level where you knew it couldn't one-shot you as a tank, it might feel a lot better, as you'd be more informed about when you could take an engagement with Hanzo. Another idea is that you could make the scatter arrow much less effective against armor, or the yellow health that a lot of tanks have a portion of. If you did that, it would retain its lethality against squishies, and it would mean that as a Hanzo, you'd have to first chip away at a tank's armor and then use scatter to burst them down. That would make it overall less of a win button and something more you chose to do at the right time. There might be a few small complications with that idea. Would Torb then become a hard counter to Hanzo, throwing armor packs out to everyone? Aha, my Zenyatta is now scatterproof. Actually, as a Zen player, I'm liking this idea more and more. However, there is one issue with all of these ideas that we haven't talked about yet, and that's the fact that just raw nerfing scatter arrow will make an already hard to use hero much more difficult. What we don't want is a Doomfist version 2, whereby the limited practicality of a hero makes them disappear from our view. And just like the Doomfist example, this problem is kind of intrinsic to Hanzo as a hero. The base problem with him is reliability. Unlike Widow, whose reliability is based on a player's skill to hit the shots, a direct benefit of being a hit scan, Hanzo, being a projectile hero, has other factors working against consistent output. Scatter provides that consistency, and its power is directly linked to how unreliable the rest of his main kit is. He's boom and bust. If you remove the boom, he's going to be largely unplayable. So when addressing scatter arrow as a problem, you have to also address why it's so necessary for him. Let's come up with some ideas of how you could replace it with something else. One idea could be that you replace it with an explosive arrow that allows a body shot to kill a squishy with the additional detonation damage, kind of like a torque bow from Gears of War if you're familiar with that. At least with an explosive arrow, you would actually have to hit a shot, and Blizzard could more directly control its damage limits. It would be less RNG and less of a "this could one-shot Winston, I just don't know" kind of scenario. Players on both sides of the ability would have a more firm idea of what to expect. But if Scatter's replacement is largely the same power level as Scatter itself, in that it provides consistent lethality, the only point it seems to replacing Scatter is 1, some perceived notion of fairness, and 2, nerfing the impact that Hanzo can have on opposing tanks. Both of which motivations I can understand, but I actually feel it's the boom-bust nature of Hanzo that actually frustrates people, not whatever ability he currently has that expresses that. So say let's replace it with something else, something utility based. What about an arrow that's kind of like a trap? Maybe his new arrow releases a poison cloud that disorients players, does dot damage, or slows them partially. It wouldn't be directly lethal like before, but you could use it in many different ways: initiation, point presence, etc. You'd still have the consistency problem with the rest of his kit though. However, if you just make his regular damage more reliable as well as extra non-lethal utility, his damage profile couldn't stay at its current power level. level. You can't just simply make 250 HP headshots easier to hit across the board. Toning down his damage a little bit while increasing fire rate and travel speed is probably the most reasonable changes you could make. Say you do those changes I just described, you give him the poison arrow, and you make his regular damage less burst-like but more reliable. That equates to quite a significant rework. If we take Hanzo from where he is now, a very dangerous but hard to utilize source of burst damage, and turn him into a more consistent, more utility-based hero, he isn't really Hanzo anymore, at least as how we've understood him thus far. But does that even matter? Shimada's in the comments. Let me know what you think. Next up, I'm going to deal with Mei. Now, I actually agree with Jeff that she could be a very oppressive hero if they're not careful with her. So adjusting her firing modes or the damage inherent in them isn't what I'd look to change personally. Instead, I'd look to refine small details of her kit to make them ever so slightly more impactful. At the moment, in pro play, she's mainly used to get heroes without mobility to places they can't normally get to, and then she's swapped off from, unless your name's Jaehong. Now, I really like that aspect of her play, and as much as I want to go mad with that concept and give Mei the ability to create ice jump pads or something, that's not that in keeping with the lore or character immersion. If anything, it's not what Blizzard was originally intending for the hero to be used for either. They'd probably want to lean away from that, not into it. Maybe we get a support hero down the line that does that in the future. We could always use more jump pads, am I right? But for Mei, I think the right decision is to make her walls more compelling. In MOBAs, Mei wall-like abilities are everywhere and are sick in those contexts, but it's kinda hard to make them relevant in a 3D shooter, apart from on an almost 2D-like choke point such as Hanamura. What might help that is if her walls had some extra properties. Say her walls slow you a fraction if you get a little bit too close to them, like 1/4 of what her main attack does. Or they could heal her very slightly when she's next to them because she's got such an affinity for the cold. Maybe her cocoon also does a similar thing and slows you a tiny amount if you get too close. Those kind of cute little lore accurate buffs to some of her kit is exactly the direction that we see Blizzard going in the future. Also, a change to her ultimate might be in order. Most people are very adept at avoiding it at this point, so maybe make it freeze targets quicker or have a larger surface area. Just something to make it feel better for Mei players. The next hero that we're going to talk about is Symmetra. Now, Jeff mentioned that they see Symmetra as a specialized hero, and that's how they're going to keep her moving forward. So major changes aren't what we're in store for, at least in terms of making her more generalized. But I really did like FREEDO's RTS idea from yesterday. She's an architect, let her build a base and progress as the round continues. One obvious way that you could do that is just give her teleporter, like straight away, but make her earn the charges for it through proper use of her turrets, damage, and photon barrier damage absorption. It would still need to be destructible, but she could build it again and again, just like Torb can with his turret. That wouldn't make her any less specialized, but it would make her less reliant on an all or nothing ultimate. Plus, if shooting her projected barriers gave her charge too, that would make them very scary. A little while ago, in fact just before Christmas, we came up with an idea that was designed to make her easier to play around and play with. If she had an ability on cooldown where she emitted a shield pulse AoE, which gave all teammates within range 100 shields for 10 seconds, you could play with her in a much more compelling way. You could actually coordinate team play with her, counter initiate with those extra shields on a set of attackers. There's loads of different options that you could use it for. And that team play aspect is exactly what she needs, instead of the rest of her team hoping she gets telly up in time while she's doing her own thing in the back line. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there's no shortage of popular ideas for what to do with Symmetra on Reddit. These range from changing the shape of her photon barrier from flat to an orb so someone can make a play with it, protecting them as they go. Giving her supportive healing turrets is also very popular, although with that particular one, you'd have to be very careful about how they built ultimate charges. They could easily be way too strong. And then there's the really simple quality of life changes, like just making the simple act of putting down a turret take less time from when it's deployed to when it's active. I'm actually glad Blizzard are looking into her. Symmetra fans have been asking for some of these changes for a long time. And that's about it for today's video, guys. There's quite a lot for you guys to unpack, and please by all means weigh in on these subjects in the comments section. Balance is always a hot subject for debate. If you have ideas of your own, please do let us know. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in great company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter, it's where you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time.